My name is Anita Mendiratt. I am very blessed to be here to represent Visa on this panel, and thank you very much for joining us. We have quite an exciting panel today. So I'm coming in as an independent. I'm very blessed to be working with CNN, the UNWTO, and other organizations, and I'm a very proud Visa card holder. And what was really interesting about this panel was to get a sense of how this beautiful little card has made its way into our lives, and how do we now make that make more work effectively. Because what we found is that for the great panel that we have, and all of us in this entire ATM, we all share a common love. It's our love for travel and tourism. Because before we are professionals in the travel industry, we're tourists. We all travel, whether it's for business or pleasure, we all travel. And what's fascinating is that when we were growing up, when we were all little kids, you remember the little adage of ticket, money, passport. Those were the things you couldn't leave without going on a trip. Now it's very much ticket, not really, it's an e-ticket. Money, actually not, it's a credit card. Passport, maybe, it's usually in our mobile phone, but we cannot go anywhere without our mobile phones, and we cannot go anywhere without our chargers. Because what we found is that the tools that we have in our travel lives have absolutely penetrated every single part of our lives on a daily basis. And that's why today's conversation is so great, because we're going to look at when it comes to identifying the connection between effectively spend and data analytics, it actually goes deeper than that. And that's why, in this day and age of digital evolution, we've evolved the title of our session. So the session we're going to be looking at is really data and loyalty in a very competitive and globalized travel industry. How do we find the sweet spot? How do we find that connection? So we know that travelers are always going to travel with us, and we know that as a traveler, the loyalty is going to be honored by keeping us mobile, keeping us inspired by the world, and keeping us safe and secure. So with that, I'm very blessed to have with me on stage three fantastic panelists who have joined me up here to get into a conversation about this. Firstly, we have Eva Skrlec, who is from the Industry Manager of Travel of Google. If anyone wants to know exactly what her background is, you can Google it, because it's very interesting when you look at it. But Eva's going to give us a really interesting perspective from what has become an indispensable travel partner of anyone, whether you're traveling locally or internationally. What would we do without Google Maps? What would we do without Google? And what you've done in travel is evolving all of that data and all of that number crunching into information that makes a difference for travelers. Similarly, we have with us Amir Lodi, who is the VP of Visa Analytics. So he's the man who makes all the sense behind all the numbers that go into the system. And we also have with us Ramesh, who is the Senior VP IT of Dubai Duty Free. So you were the only man who has a title that rhymes on our panel today. So we want to really look at what is the connection between all of the data that our credit cards capture, that Google captures, that Dubai Duty Free captures, and how do we make it work for the traveler? Before we get into our conversation, I have a warning for our lovely panelists, and I warned them outside. We don't want to talk technical. We want to talk from the perspective of the traveler, because that's what this is really about. So I've asked them to come here a little bit schizophrenic. They're coming here as professionals, but they're also coming here as professional travelers. Because we really want to understand from their perspective, how do we hit that sweet spot when it comes to travelers? Where is the loyalty? So with that, I'm going to ask each of you a question to start off with, starting with Eva. Why is this important? Why is this panel important to your business? Why are you here? Aside from the fact that, because Jag told us so, that we all followed her instruction. Why is this important, and why now?
So thanks for the introduction. I am here because I was asked nicely by a nice lady, so I couldn't refuse that. But I think this is a crucial conversation for any travel professional nowadays. First of all, we're looking at enormous amounts of data, whether you're a travel company or a card company or any kind of provider. You're sitting probably on a lot of data, not necessarily using it in the best possible way. So I think the conversation around how we use data to get the most out of our business and to do good for our customers is something that will remain to be a hot topic for the years to come. There's an expression or phrase that we like to use at Google, analysis paralysis, which describes the fact that we're sitting on so much data and trying to analyze everything that we have, which is sometimes ineffective and doesn't lead to good decision making. So I think the way we approach data and data management and our understanding of customers is really crucial to any company, Google in particular.
Brilliant, well said. Thank you very much. Please.
So, from my perspective, Visa is a payment processor. People know us as a network provider, but actually, I think our biggest asset is the amount of data that we have. We process about 100 billion transactions in a year across the world. So, and each of those transactions is an event. It's a glimpse on what a customer is doing, where they're doing it, what are they purchasing, and that allows us then to have a lot more insights around our customers. Whether that's sharing that information with our issuers or with other stakeholders like merchants, and that allows us again to provide. Since we have these insights, we understand the customer, their preferences, their lifestyle, their attitudes, even their psychographic mindsets. We can actually provide them with very tailored experiences during that event. And if that event is travel, then we know when they're traveling. And typically, you book your ticket a few weeks before you actually travel. So because we know that event is occurring, and because we have so much insights on our customers, we can actually tailor their experience before travel, during travel, and after travel. By taking all of our data, using analytics, and again, I won't use any technical terms because you told me not to. But essentially, we can derive a lot of insights around the customer, and then thereby allowing their experience to actually be very tailored. Because again, we can distinguish between folks who are traveling with children. We can infer demographic information. We can infer preferences, online preferences, behaviors, etc. So it allows us again to make that experience, that travel experience for the customer, a very unique and very tailored, and hopefully a wow to the customer.
And I think that's what the word I kept hearing you saying was insights, insights, and insights, and insights. Because to your point, we can look at the data until we're drowning in it, but so what? And what's lovely is that it's how you take that data and it tells a story about the user. And how do we make that more meaningful for them in the future based on what we know in the past? I'm very curious why you're here. I mean, we'd love you here, but I mean...
Now, Dubai Duty Free is, of course, at the heart of the passenger's journey, both in a literal sense that we provide a first-class service in terms of a retail environment when the person is traveling. And Dubai, as you all know, over the years has established itself as a hub for this migration of people from east to west. And within this hub, everyone looks to Dubai Duty Free for a good retail experience and to be able to buy whatever they want for themselves or for the children, for gifting, for whatever the purpose might be. So from a service point of view, the retail offer that we have is very important and part of a passenger's experience at Dubai Airport. But from a financial point of view, the revenue that we generate and the money that we make is also very important for the development of the airport, because typically in this region, the non-aeronautical revenue, the revenue from things like retail, car parking, food and beverage and so on, are substantially higher than the money that the airport would make from landing fees of planes or from the fuel concession or aeronautical side of the business. So from a financial sense, we are important. From a customer's journey point of view, we are important. And the reason that I'm here really is to both share and learn in terms of what we can do to make the experience better with partners. We work both with Google and with Visa, with partners who have a similar aspiration.
It's great you say that, because it is very much about finding out how do we work effectively together, because we're all touching the same person. We're all touching the traveler. I must admit, though, that I think Dubai Airport is the only airport in the world where people complain about short connection times because you don't get a chance to do the shopping, and that's a bit of a concern. I'd like to understand, though, for each of you, all three of you, your strengths when it comes to travel and your limitations. So Eva, if I was to ask you, what is Google Travel's real strength? But then, where do you need the help from, whether it's Amir or Ramesh?
Well, as you may know, Google's mission statement from the very beginning has been to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. And I think we've remained loyal to that mission statement as we develop our portfolio of products and services. So I think today, there's probably no one who knows more about travel than us. I think that's our strength and we're very proud of it. We understand a lot about how people search for travel, what their journey is, what are the steps and obstacles that they're experiencing on that journey. We understand how they book. So there is a lot that we understand about customer in that travel journey. Now, in order for that to make sense and in order for that to be fully useful, we need to work with our partners, whether it's advertisers, large businesses, small businesses, travelers, to further enhance the services that we're providing and the experience that our users have. Whether we're talking about our end users, so somebody searching for something on our search engine, or whether we're talking about advertisers who are trying to find the best way to reach their customers. So, like I said, we do know a lot. We do sit on a lot of data and great insights and knowledge about travelers. But in order for all of that to kind of come together, we're dependent on our partners.
Absolutely, and it's lovely what you're saying. Is you just the penny drop that your knowledge in the search area is incredible, especially in that dream and plan sector. But then Visa steps in and the what I want to do versus what I do are almost two different steps in the experience chain. Where are you finding that what Visa does in analytics is truly, it's outstanding, and your soon-to-be launched report is just brilliant. That valuable information is not just where in the world are travelers going, what are they spending their money on, how are they spending it, it's fantastic. Where do you find, though, there's a limitation and where you need more to be able to understand and provide that connection?
So I think we have two, I would say, areas of limitation. One is, even though we see the transaction and we see over almost 100 billion transactions, we actually don't know who that person is. The name, the demographics, we can infer a lot of it through analytics, but inference is an art, partly an art, partly a science. So we don't know actually who the person behind that is. We can profile them, but we actually don't know the identity. And we choose to be a B2B company. So the other limitation would be that we don't really reach directly to the customer because we have so much information and so much insights on the customer, but we need to reach the customer through our issuers, through our partners. So that frustration of knowing so much and yet not being able to execute on that insight, I think it's also a limitation. But we've chosen to play that space and to partner with issuers and merchants who they will actually reach their customers or the customers of the credit card, so to speak.
So it's humanizing the data
in
many ways, which is a lovely point, because then why does this help what you do in Dubai Duty Free to be able to make that traveler connection?
The thing that we are good at is the analysis of sales transactions, obviously. So we do about 25 million transactions a day, and at any point in time, we know to the last minute or 30 seconds, whatever sales has been, we can break it by various ways: Visa, other credit cards, by location, category, product, and so on.
Question: what percentage is cash versus credit
so
cards?
So the cash percentage at the moment, Monish is very happy. The credit card percentage for the first time last quarter, January to March, exceeded 50%.
Oh, really?
So it's 51.5% credit card, and the balance is cash. And within the credit card space, of course, Visa is the biggest. That's they have the largest share, and then we have the other schemes. But the point that I was making was what we are sort of good at is the analysis of transactional data. What we are not good at, and where we need people to help us with, whether it's Visa or Google, is knowing more about the customer. So for us, traditionally, the customer has been anonymous. So in a cash transaction, for example, if that's 48% of your business, you have no idea about who that customer is. On the credit card transactions, we have a better idea of who the customer is, but we have to be very careful in terms of what we do with that information because of PCI DSS compliance, privacy issues, and so on. So what we would really like is stick to what we do well, which is handling sales transaction data, and then take the help of people like Visa on the physical stores that we have and get insight from them into what else a customer is doing if he is a customer of ours. For example, if somebody flew from Dubai to Bombay, did he shop in Bombay airport? Did he buy something in arrivals in Bombay? Did he buy a bottle of perfume in Bombay instead of Dubai? So Visa can give us fantastic insight into what a person does outside of Dubai duty free. And similarly with Google and with Google Analytics, we use it heavily on the e-commerce side of our business to get a better understanding of what happens, because on the e-commerce side, the customer is not anonymous. The customer is known, the customer is registered, you have information about the customer, and Google tells us that the people visiting the site came from this location, they did this or did that. So the analytics package that Google has is fantastic. But so far, because our physical retailing is 99% of our business, and the e-commerce retailing is 1% of our business, we need the help in our blind spot, which is really knowing more about the individual customer and what his spending patterns are.
I'm intrigued by that, because in many ways, and I say this with greatest love and respect, you have a degree of monopoly in that people are in Dubai airport, they want to buy something. There's only one place to go, it's Dubai duty free.
It's a I would say it's a partial misconception that it's a monopoly. The reason for that is that if you take our passenger profile, 70% of our business comes from transit passengers, and 30% of our business comes from originating and departing passengers,
really?
O&D from Dubai. Somebody is originating and departing from Dubai. The retail offer in the downtown Dubai is fantastic. I mean, you go to Dubai Mall, you go to Mall of the Emirates, you go to Wafi, you go to any mall or any store in Dubai, you have a fantastic retail experience. So they are competition for us if you are an O&D passenger. For the 70% that's transiting, they are coming from a airport, let's say Sydney, transiting in Dubai and going to London, or coming from Lagos, transiting in Dubai and going to Bombay. And all these other airports, the airports in the Indian subcontinent, the airports in Europe, the airports in the Far East, have fantastic retail offers. So a passenger has a clear choice in terms of where he wants to spend the money, and that's where we are going to work with Visa in understanding what else do they do, in which other airports do they spend, because we don't really feel that we are a monopoly. We feel that we are competing both with downtown retailers and with other airports.
And that's a great perspective, because to your point, it's the traveler's total experience from door to door, not only in the airport.
Yeah.
So for each of you, I'd love to understand, then how do we define loyalty? When we say we want to find the sweet spot of loyalty, whether it's in Dubai Duty Free or Google Travel or in Visa, how do you, from your perspectives, actually define what is loyalty? Please.
So I think that traditionally loyalty has been defined as you've onboarded a customer, the customer is now engaging with you, and how do you keep them? So it was originally a question of retention, retaining the customer. I think now I would redefine loyalty as soon as you, in fact, even a prospect, someone who's considering you, how do you draw that customer and make that prospect a customer? And then from day one, to me, loyalty begins. All of the touch points, all of the interactions you have with the customer, whether they're service type of transactions, whether you're trying to sell them something, whether you're trying to communicate with them, I think all of that leads to the experience for the customer, and hence leads to loyalty or lack of loyalty.
And it's something that you've echoed very much what Ramesh, you were saying, that ultimately people have choices. And whether it's the current mix of choices or new offerings, how do we make someone stay with us?
Yeah.
And that really it's that choice of, I don't want to use anything else. I don't want to go anywhere else. This is where I want to go. I'd love to know from your point of view what loyalty means.
I think it's just what you just described. It's having a lot of choice, and that's something that we definitely do today. But still choosing to go for a particular brand because you have a clear understanding of what their value proposition is for you. And it can be rational, it can be tangible, it could be that an airline or hotel always offers the best rate, but it can also be very emotional and aspirational and personal to you. Whatever it is, you know what it is, and you keep going back to that brand. So, for example, I work with large airlines, and ideally in their world, loyalty would mean that you always go to that airline's website directly when you're looking for a flight. You don't go to a meta search. You're not exploring dozens of different options. You go specifically there and you opt for that airlines, even if they're a bit more expensive, even if they don't have the most convenient flight times for your destination, but you still choose to do that because you have an overall understanding why you like that brand. And I think as a traveler, I like being loyal to brands because it makes my life and it makes decision making for me easier. And I think we've all experienced a situation where we were frustrated by having too much information, by having too many options, and we're constantly questioning our choices. Have I done the right thing? Maybe I could have gotten this ticket or this hotel at a better price. Maybe I should cancel it. And this kind of questioning is very frustrating for the customers. So if you're at a point where you can be comfortable with the brand and using their services and being loyal, I think it's a great place to be, both for the customer and for the brand. But you have to work hard to get there, obviously.
But I think you've hit a really important hook that applies to us all, in that because of the increased choice, there's increased risk. And if someone books an incorrect holiday, you lose not only the money, but the time. You don't get that time back and that hope of the holiday away. So the relationship is based very much on trust. When we travel with our Visa cards, that little thing is going to get us around the world and keep us protected and keep us mobile, which is a huge element of trust. Similarly, people spend enormous amounts of money in Dubai duty-free because they know they can trust the product. They know they can trust the pricing, and they know there's a reason why your name is on it. I want to pick up something that you said, Eva, around the data. If we were to get together a year from now, you will have exponentially more data than we do today. There's so much data. How do we use that in a way that doesn't add complexity to travelers, but actually simplifies it regardless of the volumes that are coming through? From Google Travel's perspective.
I think it's tough, and what we're seeing is that a lot of companies are struggling with their approach to data. How do we manage it? How do we set up our internal structure to make the best use of data that we have? What do we track in the first place? How do we make sure that data is available to all the right people? So I think this is a discussion or a battle that a lot of companies are having today. So it's not uncommon, no reason to feel bad about it. One thing that we found, though, is that companies that are very clear on their business objectives and priorities tend to handle data much better. So if you understand that for the next year or two, your priorities are X, Y, Z, and then you try to organize your data search and your insights around those areas rather than trying to understand a billion other things about your business process or customers, I think that helps. And you just have to resist, I think, the temptation to look at everything and try to integrate everything into your business process, and kind of try to understand which tools and which resources are most impactful for your particular business priorities. Google works with a number of tools that help our clients with different parts of the customer journey and their understanding of their business. So I think having an honest conversation with your partners, whether they're Google or other media or other vendors, about what's important for you will also help us address your priority with the best possible tool. And then every client is different. We have basically individual approach for each client. They all have tailor-made reports because they are interested in different things at the end of the day. So I think always basically going back to your priorities and not trying to solve everything at the same time, I guess.
And it's interesting you say that because it's by focusing on the priorities, it takes an enormous self-discipline.
Exactly.
Because there's so much information, it's fascinating, but is it helping in the decision-making process? And this is why I'd love to understand from your perspective, because the data that you are able to accumulate is incredibly rich, and it is a window into the traveler. How do you decide how to move it forward? Because it's very easy to get lost in all of that information.
I mean, I would offer a more controversial perspective. I would say throw away the data first. Start with the customer, the traveler, the journey, the experience, the set of interactions and events that they're going through. And map those out, understand the insights of what their needs are, what their angsts are across that whole journey before, during, and then after traveling. Once that has been understood really well, I think there are people who know the data who can then provide you the insights or those wow moments where data can then be used to meet a need or satisfy a preference. But I think often people start with data and then look for a home in it, so it's more of a push type of approach. I would say it should be more of a pull type of approach. Start with the journey, start with the customer, make it customer centric, and then look to answer some of the questions that you're coming up with through data, if it's possible.
But it's a lovely way of looking at it, because it's using the data to understand, but the purpose is not the data. It's still about strengthening that customer relationship. And then when I look at what you're saying and connecting to the before, during, and after from a spend point of view, when you work together, I'm not going to ask you to reveal any secrets. When you work together, how do you find the data is most valuable to you in terms of decision making around what happens in Dubai duty free?
I mean, the first thing with data is that, and especially if you're dealing with, let's say, 15 million customers a year like we do, is that you have to be very discriminating in terms of what you collect. And you must ask yourself very seriously, why do you want a particular piece of information? So to give you an example, we had the functionality at the point of sale to collect flight information. Which flight are you going on and where you're going to, since 1989. Okay? And we started collecting that information only in 2011. No? Not because we were slow, but because we always ask the question, if you were to collect this information from a passenger about where he is going, how much time is it adding to the transaction? And what is the trade-off between the additional burden you put on him in terms of the journey and the information usage? Once a journalist asked me, for example, that if you had information on where people were going and what they bought, then you can merchandise, things differently depending on where the flight is. I said to him, if you take 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday and you take an airline like Emirates, Emirates would fly to Johannesburg, they would fly to Bangkok, they would fly to Lagos, they would fly to Dublin, and they would fly to New York, they would fly to a variety of destinations. So if you knew that, okay, the guys were going to New York were buying this, and the guys going to Dublin were buying this, and Lagos were buying this, can you really merchandise your shop differently at 8 o'clock in the morning? You can't, because the breadth and the spread of the airline is so much that you have a great cross-section of people intersecting in your environment at that particular point in time. So we have been reluctant in that sense to get information for the sake of information. And as the mechanisms to capture data become less and less intrusive for a passenger, then your ability to get the information and to use information increases. So with the advent of 2D scanning, for example, on boarding cards and stuff, we started data capture because the amount of time that it takes to scan a boarding card and capture where he is going is much less, when compared to a mag stripe transaction or if you were having a dialogue with him. So I think you have to be discriminating, and you have to seriously ask yourself, what will you do with the information? And with things like, information coming from payments, like Visa and so on, the payment transaction is going to take place no matter what. So it's not that you're adding a layer of burden to the passenger, and if you can get better insights from it, then that's fantastic. But my our view has generally been that you should be discriminating. And also because we come from an environment in the past where we had much less information, and we still did what we promised, which was provide a convenient shopping experience, an attractive shopping environment, a good quality service with a wide range of products and good quality products. So those 5 principles remain over the last 3 decades. But what is changing now, obviously, is that the passengers' expectation in terms of the interaction with them and the engage with them is increasing. And Dubai Duty Free now has to step up in terms of the engagement.
But I think that's what's lovely about what you've done is you recognize it's the experience you're providing, not just the products. Because for those people that are either arriving, leaving, or in transit, that's part of the energy of the travel and the excitement of it. And it's interesting as I want to talk about something that you mentioned on earlier about how you utilize Amir's data. And I thought from a traveler perspective, this is an area that's becoming increasingly concerning, information security. How do we manage that? So I use my Visa card, you know exactly where I'm going, what I'm doing, etc. You then provide that data to Ramesh to say, this is where she's come from, this is where she's going. Exactly, how does a traveler get the peace of mind of knowing that as much as I love and trust you with all of my data, I need to know you're going to protect me. Can you explain that to us, please?
Sure. There are various levels of information sharing that Visa can engage in. I'll mention both extremes, and then maybe you can understand the stuff in the middle too. So at one extreme is the data is actually owned by the issuer, the issuing bank. So if we are partnering with the issuing bank, we can provide them insights into their customers, and we can provide them information at a customer level. So it can be for Anita, for Ramesh, for myself, etc. The other extreme is if we are providing information to governments or to other partners where they don't own that information, we can provide them, our basic guideline is we can provide them trends and aggregate information at a point where we're not disclosing the issuer's performance separate from the overall market's performance. Also, we're not identifying individuals. So in all of the information I give, let's say, to a partner that is not an issuer, I am not providing information specifically on Anita, let's say. So that's the space we can play in. But even within that space, we can do, and you told me not to be technical, but we can do cohort analysis. So we can look for lookalikes, and we can describe groups of customers. So we still maintain the anonymity of the individual. We still maintain the performance anonymity of the issuers, but we still provide lots of insights which are actionable, which again, merchants and partners and governments can use to make better decisions.
So by segmenting rather than exposing, it's still very actionable information. You're shaking your head quite a bit. How does this resonate with you?
Exactly. I hear a lot from what you're saying. Equally, Google doesn't focus on an individual, on Anita or Eva. We're interested in patterns. We're interested in groups of people who are either displaying certain search behavior because this is of value to our advertisers. They're interested in people who are generally looking to buy a car or to book a plane rather than a person with the name. Or we're looking at affinity segments of people who in general like certain type of music or movies. So no need to be concerned there. And also with our customers, they can pretty much choose how anonymous they want to be. You can choose to browse anonymously. You can choose not to reveal data about yourself. You can also choose to modify your profile and the way that Google sees you and serves that information to someone else. However, going back to Google's mission, we want to organize and serve information in a relevant way. So what people find about us, I think, is that the better we know you, the better we can serve you. The more relevant search results we can serve, the more relevant ads we can serve. And I think relevancy is actually crucial to people being at ease with sharing their information. If they see that by sharing their information, they get things that are actually good for them. They get more relevant offers. They get better deals. I, for one, have no issues with that. But as said, it's very individual, and I think people should have a choice of how much of their data is actually shared.
But you've hit a really important point that even though there are 1.1 billion travelers, it's one person times 1.1 billion, and every individual has that choice. And it's being thoughtful about the analysis and making sure that the insight is attached to it, not just the numbers behind it. If we look forward 5 years from now, and for the speed at which the industry is growing and as a result, subsidiaries are growing, what do you see as being the real opportunity when it comes to taking all of this delicious data we're getting and really making it work for the traveler? What do you think the opportunity is?
I think the real opportunity is in what we refer to as the connected traveler. So the point that we keep making in different, let's say, in different events is that many parties within the traveler's journey know a little bit or a lot about the traveler. So Dubai Duty Free might know a little bit, Visa might know a little bit, the airport knows a little bit, the airline knows a lot. So there are multiple entities within the journey where people know information. What has been missing and what we hope happens in the next 5 to 6 years is that we have sharing of information and a better way of the passenger not having to, let's say, re-authenticate or revalidate or represent information at each part of the journey. Because some entity knows enough about that situation to help the traveler to go from that step to the next step. So whether you take check-in process, whether you take immigration, whether you take, security to a large extent, you have to go through payment, at the retailer or services or your onboard aircraft experience. Why should the journey be so disconnected from in a digital sense, and not mirror the actual process that the passenger is going through? So what we would expect is that if you have a smartphone and everybody knows so much about you because you have the phone and because you are credentialed in terms of that device, then the different constituents within the journey should make better use of that information and make your journey smoother, which is what is the end result that everybody wants. That you have a pleasant journey and a smooth journey and hopefully spend some more money.
And it's a great point, because it's making it a more pleasant journey for the traveler could be providing information about offers that are relevant to them. It could be just like when, for instance, when you land in countries and your cell phone provider will send you a message to say, great, you're connected. It's a subconscious, we've got you. And there's a psychological safety to that as well. And I think that's where, as exciting as the world of travel is, it can be a bit scary sometimes. And it's nice knowing that Visa's got me. That's really nice to know. What do you see happening 5 years from now?
I'd say we'll probably see more and more niche behavior. Segmentation will really gain importance, and brands that somehow manage to address specific needs of specific niches will really benefit from that. I mean, even if you look at millions of people who travel through Dubai every year, and just analyze that group, there are probably hundreds and hundreds of subsegments there to be found. People with very different needs, very different motivations, very different paths to purchase. So I think that the better we are at addressing those, the more we'll benefit.
Absolutely.
I think what Ramesh said, I would echo that. Each of us has islands of data, and the customer is a holistic person with all these experiences. So connecting all of these pieces of information, I think, is key. So having alliances and partnerships with various entities to actually look at the customer more holistically and look at the experience rather than the silos that we have. But I think also as important is then to deliver whatever that need or whatever that aha is very quickly, very timely. So again, through use of smartphones, if we see a certain pattern or if we see a certain offer which is very very customized, very tailored, and we see the need, delivering it as soon as possible. And again, smartphones would be the obvious choice to deliver it, because we're all hooked on our smartphones for various reasons. So it's the execution of that intelligence or that insight, I think, is as important as generating or understanding what the insight is.
And I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, that thoughtful insight, taking that information and feeding it back to the traveler so that you're creating a loop of engagement rather than one-way transactions itself. If you look at each other as partners, which I'm presuming you do, what do you need from each other going forward? So if we say, this is the opportunity in the future, we're only going to become more digital, more surgically implanted with our mobile phones on us, we're going to travel more, what do you need from Google Travel? What do you need from Visa Analytics going forward to build your business?
I think the easier question for us in terms of a maturity, going a physical retailer moving into the electronic commerce area, is that we know or we understand well what we need from Visa, because of the 50% of the transactions that go with credit card, since the majority of the value of those transactions come from Visa, we're having serious conversations with Visa in terms of what they can do and what they can't do to help us to understand the passengers who are using Visa cards in our environment and their spending patterns and their profiles and the corridors of spend and so on better. With Google, it is a more, besides us being an end user of the tool, as Google Analytics, I think what we need to do is at least start engaging with entities like Google and not just have them as some abstract thing that you see on your workstation. So I think in terms of events like this or panels like this or conversations like this, I think relationship building and having a common desire to make the passenger's experience better is what you want. And it's for us with somebody like Google, it will be an exploration. It's not a situation where, yes, we know exactly what we want, we can define it and we can do it. Because Google does a lot of things that we don't even know about, or we might know about it in a very sort of superficial way. And they may not really understand our business and what we do to the extent that we understand it. Whereas with somebody like Visa, because of the length of the relationship and the history in terms of the relationship and their work with retailers over several decades, there is much more common ground in terms of us saying to them, this is what we want and can you do this for us or not?
It's using Google and Visa as a business development
Correct.
tool, whether it's future opportunities or even squeezing the most out of existing opportunities.
Yeah.
When you look at these two lovely gentlemen, what comes to mind in terms of what you need from them to advance what you're trying to achieve?
Well, at Google, we only see part of the picture, because as much as e-commerce and digital marketing are growing, we are aware that depending on the industry, 20 to 80% of business still happens in the offline world. And we need that understanding from our partners and our customers. What happens when people are not online? What happens? Who are their real customers? How do they spend? How do they behave when they're not online? So I think without the partners, we can't really have the full picture of the entire commerce process, of understanding the customer, etc. I said e-commerce will grow and we will gain more insight into the big picture of particular brands and businesses, but it still really remains crucial that we talk to our partners and understand the real concerns of their businesses, and especially part of it that's offline.
And this is interesting, because you have the blessing and the curse of being ubiquitous. So how do you make that personal connection when you're everywhere? That's a really interesting point. Similarly, for yourself.
So Visa is not a bank. Visa is not a merchant or a retailer. We provide the engine that fuels commerce through payments. So we make money when banks issue more credit cards, when people purchase more at Dubai Duty Free or at Google, and obviously if they purchase through credit cards or through our credit card, that's where we make the money. So we can provide the engine, we can provide a lot of the insights. The heart of our business is obviously the network. We provide the network, whether it's e-commerce or whether it's face-to-face transactions. But more than that now, we can provide the insights because we know so much. But again, we will have to provide the insights with our partners in conjunction with them, because only then will they actually increase their sales or have more plastics out there.
But it's interesting as well, because to your point, there's only so much you can do, but your brands have enormous equity as well. And the rub off of those brands on one another. So Google working closely with Visa or Dubai Duty, that has huge equity that builds going forward itself. If we look then at what is the next opportunity for innovation, so why should you three lovely people be having a conversation in 3 years' time? Where do you think the opportunity really is? Is there one? Or is it more a matter of we continue as we are as business partners?
I think the opportunity is more, again, around digitization and the digital world, the e-commerce. As people get more and more comfortable with it, as that continues its growth. But again, I would say the opportunity again is around collaboration. One plus one will be 5. It won't be 3.
I must say, I like what you said there about the growth itself, because the travel industry is growing. Emirates is fueling that exponentially, which means more feet through the airport. People are becoming more digital and are utilizing those tools more and are becoming more online digital spend friendly. So there's the organic growth, not just the competitive growth as well. Do you see any big shifts and you think, I wish this could happen, this is an opportunity?
Well, there are a lot of opportunities and angles that we're working on. I would say one of the biggest bets for us, and I know I've promised not to use any tech lingo, I'll try not to get too technical, but one of the really big bets for Google is definitely programmatic. We're moving into platforms where we basically enable programmatic buying, media buying, advertising, and data management. So I think this is hugely important for our customers, but also for our end customers and for our advertisers, because it will be in a growing complexity in a landscape that's getting very complex with all the data, with all the media out there, with customer journey getting more complex. I think having the right tools to manage that complexity will be crucial for our customers. The ability to not to lose any of the data in process because you're combining different platforms, working with different partners. The ability to do proper remarketing based on what people have expressed interest in, rather than serving one fits all solution. Understanding what people were previously interested in, and then serving tailor-made offers for those customers. I think making that journey easier for both end customers, but also our brands and partners that we work with, that's one of our big bets for the upcoming years.
And it goes back to what we said earlier, that it's avoiding the temptation of getting lost in all the data and thinking of it really simply of how do we take the complexity away. It's a great point. Sir?
I think for us, the opportunity really is in customer engagement. We have been slow off the mark, to put it politely, in the past, and to do this, and it's both a fantastic opportunity in terms of engaging with the customers, tell them what we are doing, tell them what promotions we are doing, and various other aspects of our business. And the expectation of the customers has also increased significantly. I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's a frequent traveler. He looks after 80 countries within the region that he manages. And he was saying that he goes through Dubai Duty Free every week, and he says, nobody recognizes me, nobody says hello to me, nobody says, Mr. So-and-so, nice to have you back. And in my mind, I was thinking, yeah, right, if you have 15 million people going to the shops, chances that you would, that we would recognize you and say hello to you is very slim. And then I said to myself that he does have a very valid point, that if he is a frequent traveler, if he is going to the shop, if he is spending money with us on a weekly basis, why is it that we are not doing a better job of engaging with him? And that is where the real opportunity is. It's not to do with products, it's not to do with technology, it has nothing to do with waiting for the next big invention to happen. It is using the existing technologies, the existing frameworks, and having a genuine desire to do it. And then that is where I think we would see the opportunity in the next couple of years.
And I think that's a great way of pulling it together, because it links to what you were saying about the complexity. Because the more platforms we have, the more data we have, the more technological tools we have, we're becoming more disconnected than connected. And people are consolidating, and they're making those choices. They're making choices with whether it's Visa to say, this is the card I choose to travel with. because it gives me the fluidity of movement, both in terms of money and commerce, but the safety of knowing they've got me. They know where I am, they know what I'm doing, and it's all safe. And I love what you're saying as well about the fact that it's remembering that there's no reason why a customer shouldn't think, why don't you remember me? Because it's not about the data. The data is a tool to make that loyalty stronger in a way that serves the traveler. Because if it's not serving the traveler, it's serving no purpose aside from academic. I think that's a really nice way of recommending that all of these things, whether it's partnerships or data or whatever we work through, we're there to help the traveler, not hinder the traveler. And it's about keeping them safe. So with that, I just want to pull it all together and say thank you very much. Great perspective, lovely closing story. I must say that pulled it up perfectly. And thank you for sharing your points of view. And I look forward to seeing what does indeed happen in the next 5 years. You can all thank the panel. I'd be very grateful. And thank you to you all.